In this true crime documentary, we uncover the horrifying case of Theresa Kiel.
There were a lot of people who had a motive to attack and ultimately kill Theresa Kiel.
It's so sad that she's gone and justice has to be served. I mean, there's so much hurt.
Loved ones and supporters in court describing Mrs. Kiel as a devoted educator, an assistant principal and teacher for decades in the Malvern School District.
This wouldn't be anything she wouldn't give to her students, her colleagues, her family. You know, I worked across the hall for 30 years.
Our story today takes us to Nassau County, resting on the western edge of Long Island, New York, a place known for its peaceful suburban streets, its oceanfront boardwalks, and the faint hum of the city that never sleeps just a short drive away. There in the heart of this calm community lived Theresa Kiel. Theresa wasn't just another resident, she was one of the most recognized faces in town. Her reputation wasn't built overnight or by chance. In almost every home, there was a child, brother, or a sister who had once sat in her classroom. If there was one thing everyone knew about Theresa, it was that she had dedicated her entire life to children. She was more than a teacher. She was a mentor, a guide, and to many a second mother. Theresa grew up in Queens, New York. After finishing her studies, she moved to Nassau County, where she began teaching in the Malvern School District. Over the next 3 decades, she climbed from classroom teacher to assistant principal, leaving behind a legacy of care and respect. During that time, Theresa married David Kiel, a well-known dentist in Glen Cove. Together, they built what seemed like a perfect life, raising 2 children, Vincent and Francesca. With love, success, and stability surrounding them, it appeared nothing could break their family's harmony. But fate had other plans. In 2004, tragedy struck when David suddenly passed away. The loss shattered the household, especially for the children. Vincent was only 13, and Francesca just 7. Even in the darkest days, Theresa refused to fall apart. She held her family together with quiet strength and endless devotion. While working full-time, she earned her doctorate and later launched a tutoring program aimed at helping underprivileged children find their path through education. Her passion extended to her own kids as well. Vincent grew into a talented tennis player before finding his calling in software and mobile app development. Francesca excelled academically and, with her mother's encouragement, enrolled in community college after graduating high school in 2015. By 2016, life seemed finally steady. Theresa could breathe again. Her children were independent and her career fulfilling. But destiny was quietly preparing a cruel twist, one that would tear this family apart forever and erase the image of the perfect home they had once been.
Now at 5 o'clock, consequences for a barbaric and deadly barbell beating on Long Island. The victim struck several times in the head with a metal barbell in December of 2016. For 2 years, she lived in a vegetative state from her severe brain injury. And then on Saturday, she died.
It was around 10:30 p.m. on December 4th, 2016, when Franklin Cosma, a resident of Long Beach, was finishing his nightly workout. He was jogging along the city's famous 2-mile oceanfront boardwalk when he stopped near New York Avenue to catch his breath. That's when he noticed something unusual across the street. A woman was walking toward the entrance of a small apartment building. She had just stepped past the glass doors into a half-covered lobby, when suddenly a shadow appeared behind her. Within seconds, a man rushed inside after her. Moments later, piercing screams shattered the quiet night air. Franklin froze for a split second, and then it hit him. The woman was being attacked. Without hesitation, he sprinted toward the building. Through the glass wall, he could see everything. The attacker was wielding something large, a blunt object, and striking the woman again and again in the head. Franklin burst into the lobby, but the attacker spotted him, dropped the weapon, and bolted through a side exit into the darkness. Franklin made a split-second decision. The woman came first. He ran to her, finding her crumpled on the ground, barely conscious. By then, other residents were stepping out of their apartments. Franklin shouted for someone to call 911, then took off after the fleeing man. But the attacker already had a 20-second head start, and by the time Franklin reached the nearby alleyway, the figure had vanished into the shadows. When Franklin returned to the scene, flashing lights from police cruisers, ambulances, and fire trucks filled the block. Paramedics worked frantically as detectives sealed off the area. It was then that Franklin learned the victim's name, 54-year-old Theresa Kiel, a beloved teacher and longtime resident of the building. She had severe trauma to her head and face and was clinging to life as she was rushed to the hospital. As investigators began collecting evidence, the same questions echoed among them. Who could have done this to Theresa, and why? Franklin gave the police his statement. He explained that he saw Theresa walking alone toward her building when a tall man, roughly 6'3" or 6'4", wearing a hooded jacket, winter cap, and face covering, followed her inside and attacked. Based on his build, Franklin was sure the assailant was male, but with the heavy clothing, he couldn't make out any features. He did, however, show detectives the exact route where he had tried to chase the suspect. Police quickly dispatched patrol cars and K9 units throughout the area. Meanwhile, forensic specialists combed through the scene, uncovering the horrifying details of what had unfolded. Near the pool of blood where Theresa had fallen lay her purse, wallet, and a brown paper takeout bag that had burst open during the assault. Its contents scattered: napkins, plastic utensils, and her dinner. Nothing was missing, but what chilled investigators most was the damage to the wall nearby, a deep dent splattered with blood, showing that the weapon used was not only heavy, but swung with terrifying force. From that moment, detectives ruled out robbery. This wasn't random, it was personal, a deliberate, brutal attack driven by something far darker than theft. As investigators continued combing through the crime scene and piecing together evidence, a call came in from the search team that had been trying to track the suspect. Unfortunately, they hadn't been able to find him again. But there was at least one positive development. Thanks to Franklin Cosma's detailed account, detectives now knew which direction the suspect had taken when fleeing the scene. They immediately began collecting surveillance footage from nearby buildings and businesses. The videos confirmed Franklin's story. The same chase, the same figure, the same description. The suspect was clearly visible running down the street, carrying what appeared to be a dark gym bag. That one detail changed everything. Detectives suspected the attacker might have brought a change of clothes or tools inside that bag, a sign that this wasn't spontaneous. It was planned. But the biggest breakthrough came just hours later. Following the path seen on camera, officers discovered something lying on top of a garbage bin behind a fenced alleyway. It was a metal dumbbell bar, stained with blood. The weapon was immediately sent to the lab for testing, and based on its weight and size, investigators were nearly certain it was the very object used to bludgeon Theresa Kiel. While detectives were processing that new lead, officers from the Long Beach Police Department headed to North Shore Manhasset Hospital, where Theresa had been rushed after the brutal assault. What they learned there stunned them. Doctors couldn't say whether she would ever wake up or survive at all. At her bedside stood her brother Michael and her 24-year-old son, Vincent. He had arrived within minutes of the attack, after receiving a frantic call from a neighbor. Vincent told detectives that he and his mother had dinner together earlier that evening. Everything seemed perfectly normal. They laughed, they talked, and then went their separate ways, never imagining that it would be the last meal they would ever share. When Vincent finished recounting the night, investigators gently asked the next question, one that would soon change the course of the entire case. Where was his sister, Francesca? He said he had tried calling his sister several times, but she never answered. Still, he wasn't surprised. According to Vincent, that had become normal lately. That caught the detectives' attention. They asked him why, and his answer changed everything. Earlier that year, Francesca had a major falling out with both her brother and her mother, because of her relationship with her boyfriend, 26-year-old Ralph Kepler, who ironically used to be one of Vincent's closest friends. Ralph worked as a corrections officer in New York City, but outside his job, he shared Vincent's passion for business and tech. When Ralph learned Vincent was developing a college-based dating app, he wanted in. Soon after, Ralph and his family invested roughly $130,000 into the project. For a while, things went smoothly. Then, everything fell apart. The friendship began to crumble the moment Vincent and Theresa discovered that Ralph had been secretly dating Francesca for over a year. She was only 19 at the time, fresh out of high school, and Ralph was 7 years older. Theresa strongly disapproved of the relationship, but Francesca refused to end it. Eventually, she moved into Ralph's home. To the detectives, the story sounded messy, but not alarming enough to suspect either of them in Theresa's brutal assault. After all, it was hard to imagine a daughter having any role in something so savage. Still, they took down the couple's address and decided to speak with them directly. By the time officers reached Lynbrook, nearly 3 hours had passed since the attack. Both Ralph and Francesca were home. When they opened the door, they looked shocked to see police officers standing there. The detectives explained why they had come and asked to speak with them separately. Each agreed. Ralph was placed in one room, Francesca in another. Ralph told investigators that he and Francesca had been home all evening, wrapping Christmas gifts and watching football. He said the last time he left the house was around 11 a.m. that morning to buy a lottery ticket for his grandfather. When detectives interviewed Francesca, her story matched his, but she went a step further. She provided proof. On her phone and social media accounts were several time-stamped photos showing her and Ralph wrapping Christmas gifts in their living room. The timestamps were key, between 10:24 and 10:41 p.m., the exact window when the attack on Theresa took place. With that, both Ralph and Francesca appeared to have solid alibis, and detectives initially ruled them out as suspects. Still, the conversation didn't end there. When asked about their strained relationship with Theresa and Vincent, both Ralph and Francesca admitted to ongoing conflict, but claimed the police didn't know the full story. Yes, their secret relationship had caused tension, but according to them, that was only half the truth. The other half, they said, was that Vincent had been scamming investors. Ralph alleged that by the time his secret relationship with Francesca came to light, the business partnership with Vincent was already collapsing. The app development had stalled, deadlines were missed, and communication broke down. When Ralph pressed Vincent for answers, he got excuses or silence. And when asked how Theresa fit into all this, the couple dropped a bombshell. Theresa, they said, had helped Vincent raise even more money from outside investors. Ralph claimed that he and his family's $130,000 investment, along with additional funds, were being misused, spent lavishly by Vincent and Theresa for personal gain. He added that his family had filed a lawsuit against them, and that several other investors were furious as well. Some, he speculated, might have been desperate enough to take revenge. It was a stunning revelation, one that completely shifted the direction of the case. Detectives now had to consider a new angle. Could the attack have been retaliation tied to the failed business venture? They compiled a list of every investor connected to Vincent's app and began interviewing them one by one. But to their surprise, not a single person showed the level of anger Ralph described. Most said they'd already recovered their money, and none seemed to believe Vincent or Theresa had done anything criminal. With no leads and no suspects, investigators started to widen the scope of their search. They looked into recently released offenders, anyone in the area with a violent record, but nothing fit. Just as hope began to fade, a new piece of evidence emerged. Theresa's phone records came back from analysis, and in those records, one name stood out. The person most frequently contacting Theresa, and the one she'd argued with the most in the weeks before the attack, was none other than Ralph Kepler. It turned out that in the months leading up to the attack, Ralph had been sending Theresa a barrage of disturbing and threatening messages, texts, emails, even images, each one pulsing with anger and obsession. In them, Ralph accused Theresa of stealing from him and his family, calling her a liar, a thief, and worse. This discovery changed everything. Detectives went back to review the surveillance footage they'd collected from around the crime scene on the night of the attack. And suddenly, a chilling realization set in. The man seen following Theresa, his size, his posture, the way he moved, matched Ralph Kepler's build almost perfectly. Broad shoulders, muscular frame, confident stride. It was as if the puzzle pieces were finally snapping into place. But suspicion wasn't enough. Detectives knew they needed concrete evidence to bring Ralph down. They still had too many unanswered questions. What about his airtight alibi? And could Francesca, Theresa's own daughter, have played a role in this? Thanks to the threatening messages, investigators were able to secure search warrants for both Ralph's and Francesca's phone records. What they found next made their blood run cold. Roughly 2 weeks before the attack, Francesca's phone showed a call to a toll-free number beginning with 1-800. That number traced back to a company called SpyTech. When detectives contacted the company, they made a stunning discovery. The purchase records showed a transaction under Francesca's credit card. Just days before the attack, she had ordered a small GPS tracking device. That lead cracked the case wide open. SpyTech provided the authorities with data logs from the tracker. And the moment detectives opened the file, they realized they were staring at something huge. The device had been moving consistently between only 2 locations, Theresa Kiel's apartment and the school where she worked. Investigators now believed Ralph and Francesca had planted the tracker on Theresa's car, monitoring her every move in the days before the attack. Their suspicions were confirmed when police gained access to Francesca's email account. Inside her inbox were dozens of automated GPS alerts, each one marking a time and location. Every time Theresa left home, went to work, or stopped anywhere in between, Francesca knew. And with every ping, the outline of a terrifying plan grew clearer. Further search warrants for Ralph and Francesca's phone location data revealed a deeply unsettling pattern. Every few days, their devices appeared in the exact same spots as the GPS tracker they'd planted on Theresa's car. Investigators soon realized what they were looking at: the times when the two were sneaking out to replace the tracker's batteries, keeping it alive for months as they quietly monitored Theresa's every move. The mountain of evidence was growing fast, and it was starting to shatter the picture-perfect alibi Ralph and Francesca had built. Just minutes after the attack on December 4th, phone records showed a call placed from Francesca's phone to a Long Beach taxi company. The call originated from Lynbrook, the same town where the couple lived. To detectives, there was only one explanation. Francesca had called the cab for Ralph, arranging his getaway. Police contacted the taxi company, and their logs led them straight to the driver who worked that night. A woman who immediately recognized the man they described. She remembered him vividly. He'd jumped into the far back seat of her van, crouched low as if trying to hide his face, and insisted she take him to a nearby train station. Then he threw her a $20 bill for a $5 fare and told her to keep the change. Detectives pulled security footage from both ends of that cab ride, the pickup point and the station. And there, plain as day, was the same man Franklin Cosma had chased from the crime scene. The same man whose frame and gait matched Ralph Kepler. On January 24, 2018, more than a year after the attack, Ralph Kepler was arrested. Ironically, he was taken into custody while on duty at Rikers Island, where he worked as a corrections officer. He was charged with second-degree attempted murder. Ralph refused to speak to investigators, but it no longer mattered. The case against him was solid. A court order was issued for a DNA swab, and the results confirmed what detectives already suspected. Ralph's DNA matched the sample found on the metal dumbbell bar recovered near the crime scene. The blood on it, as expected, belonged to Theresa Kiel. But when it came to Francesca, things were murkier. The evidence pointed toward her involvement, but her defense, that Ralph had manipulated and controlled her, complicated everything. Friends described Ralph as abusive and controlling, saying he'd isolated Francesca, turned her against her family, and convinced her they were plotting to steal her inheritance. Even so, prosecutors found two critical discoveries that made them push forward with charges against her. The first came from a new warrant for her internet search history, and what they found was chilling. In the days before and after the attack, Francesca had searched for phrases like, "How reliable is DNA evidence? How to kill someone and get away with it? Weakest part of the skull." On November 10, 2018, after nearly 2 years in a vegetative state, Theresa Kiel passed away.
The victim's daughter and her boyfriend are now charged with murder. Eyewitness News reporter NJ Burkett is live in Hempstead with the story. NJ?
Well, detectives say it was all about money and a business venture that went south. A woman is allegedly murdered as payback, and the suspects, the woman's daughter and the daughter's boyfriend. Detectives say 21-year-old Francesca Kiel plotted the cold-blooded murder of her own mother, conspiring with her 27-year-old boyfriend, Ralph Kepler, a former Rikers Island correction officer, accused of using a barbell to shatter the skull of Theresa Kiel, a beating prosecutors described as barbaric.
She was hit several times about the head with a barbell. It's caused severe injuries to her head and a loss of her right eye.
It happened in December of 2016, outside her apartment in Long Beach, Long Island. Mrs. Kiel survived for nearly 2 years, partially blind and comatose, until she died this weekend. Kepler was already facing assault charges. Francesca Kiel had not been charged until today. Her lawyer says the arrest came as a shock.
Francesca, unfortunately, has to bury her mother while also fighting these allegations, which she obviously vehemently denies.
At the heart of the case, legal motions and a lawsuit. Kepler was suing Theresa Kiel over a dating app they were developing and money he and his family invested that the victim allegedly squandered. Mark Gann is Kepler's attorney.
I believe that there are others that had motives to attack her. We've investigated some of those. I can't get into detail right now. But I fully believe that Ralph is innocent of these charges, and I expect to be able to prove that in court.
But Theresa Kiel's civil attorney says he lived in fear of Ralph Kepler and even carried a panic button.
The Nassau County Police told me that I was in danger, and they gave me some security devices so that I could protect myself and my family.
Well, the civil lawsuit is on hold tonight in light of the new criminal charges. I'm told the couple were still living together.
The charge against Ralph was upgraded to second-degree murder. Francesca was arrested and charged with murder as well. As the trial approached, prosecutors believed they had finally pieced together the entire puzzle. They were ready to prove that Ralph and Francesca had planned the murder together. They'd bought the Spytech GPS tracker, monitored Theresa's movements for weeks, and coordinated a precise attack. On the night of December 4th, when Francesca received a GPS alert showing her mother leaving for dinner, Ralph drove to Long Beach and waited for her return. While Ralph carried out the assault, Francesca worked on maintaining the illusion of being home, carefully crafting her alibi. Though no direct evidence proved how she faked the timestamps on the photos, investigators theorized that she and Ralph took the pictures earlier that evening, uploaded them to a temporary account or burner phone, deleted them before 10:30 p.m., then re-downloaded and posted them later to make it look like she was home during the attack. Detectives also suspected at least one burner phone had been used to coordinate the escape, explaining how Ralph managed to contact her after the assault so she could call the cab. Despite their repeated denials, both Ralph and Francesca eventually accepted plea deals. Ralph pled guilty to second-degree murder, second-degree conspiracy, and fourth-degree weapon possession. In June 2020, he was sentenced to 22 years to life in prison. Francesca, whose role was seen as secondary but undeniable, pled guilty to first-degree manslaughter and received 13 years in prison. As of now, both remain behind bars. According to prison records, Ralph Kepler will be eligible for parole in 2040 at age 50. Francesca Kiel will be eligible in 2029 when she turns 32. 2 lives forever destroyed, 1 life stolen, and a mother's love betrayed in the most unthinkable way imaginable. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more true crime documentaries. See you in the next video.